Welcome to Steel City Soliloquies, where we explore the past, present, and ongoing path of Pittsburgh through its 90 neighborhoods. I'm Ken, your host and prodigal Pittsburgher, who returned after 25 years to find a place that felt both eerily familiar and utterly unrecognizable. I've spent the last 5 years getting reoriented and reacquainted, and I use this podcast to help everyone keep up with and share the stories the city is spinning right now.
We're here in the heart of Prague, crown jewel of the Czech Republic, a land with a long and proud history dating back to the 10th century. Despite its long history, it's only been an independent nation for a little more than 100 years, having finally wrested control of its destiny from the Habsburgs at the end of the First World War. And wouldn't you know it, that struggle ran right through Pittsburgh. Today, we're talking about the Pittsburgh Agreement and the pivotal role it played in the drive for Czech independence. The story of the Pittsburgh Agreement didn't start in Prague, of course. It ended there. It didn't even start in Pittsburgh. It started in Cleveland in 1915 with the signing of the Cleveland Agreement, which outlined the intent of Czechs and Slovaks to work together toward independence for their lands. The Pittsburgh Agreement was the next logical step, a formal MOU outlining the intent to form a new nation, Czechoslovakia, that comprised both Czech and Slovak lands, yet still provided a great deal of autonomy for each group, bordering really on self-governance. It was kind of like a confederation. Yeah. That agreement was signed on May 31st, 1918, in the Order of Moose Building, or the Moose Building as it was known locally, at the corner of 7th and Penn in downtown Pittsburgh. That site is directly behind me. The building, of course, was demolished in 1984, but in 1918, it housed several hundred Czechs and Slovaks from around the Pittsburgh area. They joined 29 delegates from the Czechoslovak National Council, itself comprised of fraternal organizations from around the country. Those delegates drafted and signed the Pittsburgh Agreement. That, in turn, set the stage for the Washington Declaration, a formal declaration of independence for Czechoslovakia from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It was published in Washington, D.C. on October 18, 1918. And it differed from the Pittsburgh Agreement with one significant facet. It called for the formation of a republic rather than a confederation, which had the effect of strengthening the union between the Czechs and Slovaks into a stronger, more centralized federal government. That, in turn, created a country that was strong enough to withstand and persevere through what would become a very difficult century, what with Nazi occupation followed by Soviet hegemony. So that's the what of the Pittsburgh Agreement. It's a very important story in and of itself, and it highlights the role that Pittsburgh plays from time to time in international events. But the why of the Pittsburgh Agreement is interesting. It's a very interesting story as well. And it's as much about immigration as it is about nationalism. And in fact, it's only when you look at the agreement through the eyes of immigration, or through the lens of immigration, that it makes sense that the leaders of the independence movement chose places like Cleveland and Pittsburgh for support and momentum. Let's dive into that thread, shall we? Immigrants, in fact, went to great lengths to maintain ties to the homeland and vice versa. There was a lot of sharing and shaping and teaching and celebrating both within those communities and between the communities and their families in Europe. And that's a facet of immigration that is often overlooked. In the stories we're told, immigrants settle in the U.S. and become part of the fabric of the country over time. Hence the cliched reference to the melting pot that we used to hear so much about. In that story, immigrants are on a one-way ride, a quest to become Americans, to help the country grow and prosper. Implicit in that, of course, is a sense of letting go of the old ties and the old ways as they assimilate and become Americans. And to a large part, that story is true. But it's also incomplete, and it masks a more profound benefit of immigration. The effort that immigrants put into maintaining a sense of national identity and nurturing cultural ties and maintaining contact with their families in Europe creates deep deep personal ties that are far richer than superficial political alliances or temporarily convenient business partnerships. You know, if nurtured, these deep ties can create the bedrock for a stable, mutually beneficial relationship between the US and the countries that these immigrants originated from. And that relationship can be successful and can really drive growth and drive engagement on many levels. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, approximately 50,000 Czechs and upwards of 200,000 Slovaks immigrated to Pittsburgh. The Czechs tended to settle around Troy Hill. They had a particular concentration there. And the Slovaks, they settled in the Upper Mon Valley and along the North Shore. Now, those numbers, 50,000 Czechs, 200,000 Slovaks, represented 12% of all Czechs that emigrated to the US and 32% of all Slovaks. Combined, Pittsburgh became the home for 25% of all Czechs and Slovaks who came here. That's 1 in 4. And that made Pittsburgh a primary center for Czech and Slovak language and culture outside of Europe. Now, despite being thousands of miles from their families in Europe, the immigrant communities maintained active ties, and cultural preservation and national identity were a key part of that. Things like customs, traditions, and even cuisine were kept alive through festivals, folk ensembles, and other community events. And those activities involved a lot of correspondence back and forth between the US and Europe to make sure that the traditions and the language were current and that they were alive and that they were passed on. And these communities even formed fraternal orders. They formed cultural clubs and religious associations to serve as hubs for this knowledge sharing and also to serve as hubs for communication with their families in Europe. And they would pass news, they would organize remittances between the two countries, and of course, they would support political causes. And that's how the Pittsburgh Agreement came to be signed in the Moose Building in 1918. At the time, Pittsburgh had 250,000 Czech and Slovak immigrants who had created a network, an influential network of organizations to maintain their ties to Europe. And they supported the growing independence movement, which itself was born from resistance to the Habsburg policies of Germanization and Magyarization in Europe that were slowly erasing Czech and Slovak language and culture there. They were a deep well of support that Tomáš Masaryk knew needed to be tapped if the independence movement were to continue to gain strength and momentum. And tap them he did, to great effect. On October 28, 1918, just 5 months after the signing of the Pittsburgh Agreement, and 10 days after the Washington Declaration, Masaryk and his allies stood in Prague and proclaimed the formation of Czechoslovakia. Now, the Pittsburgh ties that helped create Czechoslovakia endure today, long after the swell of immigration ended. And that effort picked up steam in the 1990s and early 2000s with the dissolution of Soviet hegemony and the splitting of Czechoslovakia into the Czech and Slovak republics. Central to that effort was Friends of Via, a partner organization, a Pittsburgh-based partner organization to Nadache Via, which is Prague-based and which funds community and infrastructure projects throughout Czechia. Friends of Via works on both sides of the Atlantic to ensure that Czech and Slovak language and culture are strengthened in Europe and remembered in the US. Today, we're going to talk with Carol Hochman, Executive Director of Friends of Via, to learn a little more about how that organization keeps those ties between Pittsburgh and Europe fresh and vibrant. We're joined today by Carol Hochman, Executive Director of Friends of Via and former Honorary Consul for the Czech Republic for Western Pennsylvania and Ohio. Carol's a Pittsburgh native. She grew up in a Czech-speaking family with ties to towns in Western Czechia. And she's no stranger to that country herself, having traveled there more than a dozen times. In addition to her work with Friends of Via, she also serves as an advisor to the Pittsburgh Czech and Slovak Language School for Children. Thanks for talking with us today, Carol.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, oh, it's a pleasure. So I've talked about how the deep ties forged by the immigration, it really created bond between the Czech and Slovak immigrants in Pittsburgh and their families in Europe, and how that helped precipitate the signing of the Pittsburgh Agreement in the Moose Building in 1918. And I've also mentioned, how Friends of Via has really helped to maintain and to strengthen those ties, over time, over the past 20, 30 years. But there's another organization that that's also been working to keep Czech and Slovak culture vital, and it has to do with the room we're in today. Can you elaborate on that?
Our Czechoslovak room, we say 100th anniversary of all the nationality rooms are being celebrated this year. This room was one of the first rooms to get organized, and it's maintained being an active room since the day it was dedicated on March 7th, 1939. Some of the history of the room. In 1926, Chancellor Bowman and Ruth Crawford Mitchell had ideas of setting up these nationality rooms. And the plan was the rooms would look like the culture and the traditions of the country they were representing. So by 1926, the plan was include the rooms in this glorious building they were creating called the Cathedral of Learning.
And that's a point I think is really important, is that these nationality rooms were not an afterthought. They were step one. I mean, as they were planning the Cathedral of Learning, they were planning for the nationality rooms.
They were, and there had to be planning committees. We had a committee organized by 1927. We all had already the year before received our first donation.
Wow.
So plans were in the working to design this room, and the plan was to make it look like a farmhouse from early times with the wood paneling. There's a lot of botanic drawings on the walls, but they used artisans from the Czech Republic, in fact, to decorate the room. So the room got started with the very beginning of the building, and it was finished by 1939. Okay. A decision was made to dedicate it on the birthday of the first president of Czechoslovakia, Thomas Garrick Masaryk. So on March 7th, 1939, there was a grand opening of dignitaries from Czechoslovakia, both Czech and Slovak, including Jan Masaryk, the son of Thomas Masaryk. He came with a letter from his father, who had passed away 2 years before, but the letter was written to the university students to remind them university studies are important. And so students come in this room, and the rooms are designed to be classrooms. They're not museums.
When I studied here, I took mainline. I had philosophy classes. I had psychology classes. Yes, I remember. Well, I had several in here. Yeah, in these rooms.
And visitors that have come are impressed with the room, but they're impressed also with the whole concept of all the different cultures that you experience in walking through the first floor, the third floor, where there's 31 of these rooms located.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
So we've had a great connection, I think, for our Czech and Slovak Pittsburghers with this room. All the ethnic groups in Pittsburgh have the advantage of these rooms. But as I said, our room has stayed pretty active. The dedication ceremony in 1939 was a very grand event. I would say the next landmark that happened came in, I'm forgetting.
Oh, please check your notes, yes.
Okay, I think in 1948, Communism was starting to take over in Czechoslovakia, so there was more immigration, and more people came to Pittsburgh. They came with their families, and this room took up many family memberships, and children became involved in the room as well.
So that's interesting. The popular concept of the Iron Curtain, if you will, is that it cut off immigration. You remember the Berlin Wall, we're keeping everybody in. So immigration actually ticked up during that time.
It did, in a way, for people who came to work in the industry here and in the universities. There were quite a few professors teaching here, teaching at Carnegie Mellon, and they came again with their families, and they settled here.
And they became part of the room.
They did. The room was very active during that time.
You say it's active. What are some of the things that the room, and it's a room committee, right, that kind of raises funds and kind of manages the room?
Well, scholarship is the main goal of the rooms. Okay. And that was the formation in later on the nationality rooms and the intercultural exchange programs. Said rooms should offer scholarships to study abroad. And our room was one of the more active rooms in sending students and bringing students from both the Czech Republic and Slovakia.
Were the scholarships for study back in Czechoslovakia?
They could be, and later on other scholarships were arranged to bring students here, mostly graduate students who studied here.
So it went both ways.
Yes, yes. The scholarship was always the goal of this room, that I think the Czech and Slovak immigrants saw it as opportunities for their children, that this room existed, this university existed. So the events held in the room were festive. There was often music, classical music groups would come and play, parties, food, always food, ethnic food.
Food is important, yes.
So it's had a glory, and still does have a very active group of people.
So aside from scholarships, it also started as a cultural hub.
Yes.
Basically, to keep, and during those activities, where there was probably Czech and Slovak, who said ethnic food, that there were traditional food. Did you work on rituals? Did you work on trying to pass traditions down during those activities? Or were they primarily social, or were they?
Oh, it was both, but there was always some sort of talk at the beginning, or some information shared about the history. We always celebrated March 7th as Masaryk's birthday, and some of the history would come into play there. Yes, there was traditions that were explained and shared.
So these rooms really, they're not museums.
No. They actually have changed over time, I would say, even in that we've moved from, well, we still have the history and the lectures and the past. And we talk about the Sokol program, which is a gymnastic program that was very, and still is very popular in the Czech Republic and in Slovakia. So it's kind of keeping up with the times. And now that I don't know that we've talked yet about our language school and other events that keep us connected.
Are the rooms supporting that?
The rooms have to stay within the scholarship and the history, but as it applies to that parameter, yes, everything's included.
And I remember when I was studying here, and toward the end of the fall term, the rooms would change. They would become quite festive. The holiday decorations, and every nationality was different. Who decorates the room?
Well, the committee. Every year there's a committee that's involved. Lately, are the students that we'll talk about in our Pittsburgh language school. They've participated. They're really a big help. So they come in and help decorate. So it's a variety of people, and people from the committee are welcome to join.
So that would be fun to decorate.
It is
and they always looked so festive. Yeah,
absolutely.
And there are holiday tours, right? I mean, around.
Oh yes.
I think the end of the Pitt term is probably the second week in December, and then I think they run tours through Christmas.
There's a special tour night, yes,
Okay.
where you can come through and there's food and music, you know, everything. So
excellent. So let's circle back a little bit to the 100th anniversary. So again, planning began, I mean, and for those who don't know, the cathedral planning, the construction, I think, actually started in 1926 for the Cathedral of Learning. So you know, these rooms were on the ground floor. They were literally on the ground, literally and figuratively on the ground floor. They were designed to go in here. So that was 100 years ago, and there's been I think a year-long celebrations this year to celebrate not just the Czech and Slovak room, but all of the rooms. And it's, you know, and I think it's going on throughout the year. I
think it will go on more as the students return for regular semesters. There's been a gala held for every room sent representatives to a very nice evening of recognition of all the rooms. Yeah. There have been lectures. There was a lecture here that we attended on our archives, which are, I think, filled to the brim with people who have contributed many things. They're on display in the room. There's a lot in our archive, so we've been busy keeping track of all of that as well. So we had a lecture on what is in our current archive.
That would be amazing. Are the archives controlled by the room committee? Or is it by the university?
Yeah, it's more by the university.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that has to be a major accomplishment. 100 years, you know, these rooms are still here. They're still vital after 100 years.
I think so.
And, you know, and from the looks of them, it could be another 100 years. You know. So let's talk a little bit about Friends of VIA now. You know, it's can you give us a little bit of the history, you know, and the mission of the organization?
So Friends of VIA had its beginnings with the former ambassador to the Czech Republic. His name was William Lurs, and his wife Wendy. And they were there during the time that Václav Havel was not yet president, but he was establishing a presence in Czech society.
And that was after the fall, right at the time of the fall of communism.
Around the time, yes.
Okay.
So his ambassadorship ended. He came back to New York City. They had a foundation established there called the Foundation for a Civil Society. And so it became their goal to support the nonprofit community that even Václav Havel was interested in promoting in the Czech Republic, in Czech and Slovakia at the time. So they set up plans for two nonprofits that would have their home base in Prague. That would be the VIA Foundation, and another nonprofit in Bratislava that is called Pontus. VIA, perhaps meaning the path to philanthropy, Pontus meaning the bridge to the same. And they both they were set up with funding, but their goal was to become self-sustaining, and both of them did, and both of them still are doing wonderful work in the NGO communities of their two countries.
So these are organizations that are supporting infrastructure and community development in their respective countries.
Right. Their mission is pretty much the same: strengthen the nonprofit community, strengthen philanthropic giving, and for VIA, a strong push on community development and engaging citizens in taking responsibility for what happens in their communities. It wasn't, the goal was never to be a big city foundation. Instead, VIA reaches out to the small towns and villages where they felt that they could make a difference in the lives of the people in those communities. And they did it in a very grassroots way. Yeah. The wonderful executive director of the beginnings of VIA, and he just recently retired, Jiří Barta, came to Pittsburgh at some point during this time He was studying at Carnegie Mellon University, getting his MBA, and he completed that here. We met him here, and he returned to Prague, and he then really fell into this idea of the importance of the NGO community. So he established this philosophy for VIA and asked that Friends of VIA become their fiscal agent in the United States.
Ah, so that's the partnership. Okay.
Yes, that's the partnership, and we manage the funds that we receive from donors in the United States.
So it's the Czech and Slovak community in the U.S. giving back.
It is
giving back to their homeland, to their home
yes,
countries,
and it's worked very well now. We were established as a 501c3, Friends of VIA, here in Pittsburgh in 2004.
Okay.
So we've been here
20-some years.
a long time.
Yeah.
We're an all-volunteer board, and we all have our own unique ties to the Czech Republic. Yeah. And we've even had a tour. They brought our board over to tour some of their projects.
There is, the small aside. I had the pleasure of meeting Robin. He's one of your board members, and he runs tours in the Czech Republic.
Robin
lives in Pittsburgh.
Robin Zofalik has been with us from the start.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a very important member of our board.
Yeah. Yeah. I was surprised. He's back and forth.
Yeah.
Again, it's that two-way. Immigration is not a one-way thing. And it sets up this two-way relationship.
Mm-hmm. And it is very much that, yes.
Yeah, it is. So you've been around since 2004, Friends of VIA.
Right.
And you've been helping to support projects, the fiscal agent, helping to funnel money that will support projects. What are some of the projects that you're most proud of?
Oh boy.
Long list.
I know, there's so many. Well, I think the projects themselves and how they get organized is interesting. It's a very grassroots approach to coming into a community with mentors, with people who are interested in social work and economic development. The staff of VIA has a lot of outreach. So what they look for is a community leader who will gather people together. If there's already a community center, perfect. If not, maybe that's the project. They need to build one or renovate it. They bring people together, maybe people who hadn't really talked with each other much during the communist era because you were just a little more cautious then. So part of the goal is just to get people to come together and start trusting each other again. But it happens if you can come up with a good project, do the brainstorming, have the mentoring help from VIA. Everybody's ideas are included, and you zone in on something where there's common ground, where you all agree that's what we should do.
That's the priority. Okay.
Yes. So that's the start. You send in your application to VIA. Once a year, they evaluate applications. They have the technical assistance of engineers, historians, whatever they need to say, yeah, this is a good project. We'll go with this. VIA responds often with micro grants or maybe a matching grant.
Okay. Definitely
mentors, giving them, assistance. But the deal is, you community people, you have to do the work yourself. Now, if you need big equipment or special advice, but no. So there are wonderful pictures of people out with their wheelbarrows and shovels. And I mean, some of them in the early days, it was all about the environment for sure. Building parks, clearing land. So there were pictures of little old ladies in their babushkas, wheelbarrows and digging in the ground, planting plants. And the parks that they renovated stayed well cared for, amazingly. We thought they'll build it and forget it, but they valued them.
We were there recently, and Czechoslovakia is like Prague is a beautiful city. There's a lot of hype around it. It lives up to every inch of that hype. It's a beautiful, vibrant city. But we, came in on a train and we could see the countryside, and it was beautiful country.
Well, that's via territory, and so that when you're out in those towns and villages, you'll see the parks. I'm sure you'll see the gardens. There were a lot of community gardens that were started. Parks, always going back to the parks, always had benches for the elderly people.
Yeah.
That was important. And if the children were involved in the planning, which they often were, they had their pictures drawn of what they wanted in the park. And so they were there to build their playgrounds. They also got involved sometimes with treatment of animals, animal shelters.
Okay.
The kids had their ideas and they were often listened to.
That came from the kids.
Yeah. Which is going to lead us later to this other program that Via started. So a lot of tree planting, renovating the land.
Yeah.
There was a story of a village or a town that was going to plant a lot or renovate or replant fruit trees, apple trees, pear trees. They had a lot of them ordered. So the community had organized what they thought was enough people to do the work. And it was going to take 3 days, but they were in for it. And so they started. And then all of a sudden, all these people showed up who weren't expected. And they said, we're here to help you. So they got the work done in 1 day. So it was kind of a story of, there's a lot of goodwill out there. And it's just waiting for its chance to show up.
Yeah.
So I like that story. And that probably happened more than we can imagine. So other projects were foster care was something that was new in the Czech Republic. Respite care for people who were taking care of special needs people at home. They were thinking of, digging in what's really going to help this community to be better. And the handicapped who had been pretty much, I think, isolated, they started work on including them in the workforce. So they were looking at all the details. Recently, there was an influx of Ukrainian refugees coming in.
From the war.
Mostly women and children. So these community centers who were already set up, we're taking them in, helping them, of course, find housing, offering babysitting so the women could go look for jobs. The women, of course, were sharing food festival, Czech food, Ukrainian food. And there was one village where the Czech women with the Ukrainian women started making camouflage nets and uniforms even that were being sent to the Czech, back to Ukraine.
Back to Ukraine.
And so this was a true sharing of...
That's amazing.
I know.
And I think Slovakia actually borders the Ukraine, right?
Right.
So that was the path for the refugees.
That was an easy path. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was it more Czechia that had? Did they go through Slovakia to Czechia, or did they mostly settle in Slovakia?
I don't know. I don't know their route in. I mean, it was a safe way to come in through Slovakia.
Yeah. I mean, it's the western, it was the western edge, so it was away from the fighting at least. I would imagine quite a few made it through.
Well, this year alone, VIA has reported they conducted, I think, 32 integration projects involving Ukrainian families settling. And a lot of them, I think, are just there for the long term.
So, really? So they're going to become Slovakian and Czech and Slovakian citizens.
They've learned the language. When we were there a few summers ago, we saw them in restaurants being waitresses and servers.
All right. That's excellent.
So they're settling in.
All right. Well, yeah. And unfortunately, it could be for the long haul. Yes.
So all these projects that have gone on since 1997, and there's so many different ones, it's hard to focus in on any one of them. But VIA has kept track of them. And they feel they've conducted or have completed 10,000 of these community development projects.
10,000.
That's a lot. And they're still counting.
They're still counting. They've lost count. They've lost count of all the projects.
I don't know how they count, but it's a lot.
No, it's amazing. And it's been 89, 90, 26 years?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
it could come up to 30.
36.
Next
36,
year.
yeah. Yeah. I wasn't a math major. It's been 36, only 36 years. You had 10,000, and you didn't. I guess the Via Foundation got started right after the fall of communism, or did it?
Well, again, I mean, the Lures and the Foundation for Civil Society, they got it together by 1997.
Right. So it hasn't been 36 years. It's been,
right.
That's amazing. All those projects. That's amazing. Wow. So let's talk a little bit about your work with the school, with the language school.
Okay. The school was actually, the concept for these schools, again, came from the Czech Foreign Ministry and also the Slovak Foreign Ministry. Around about 1996, they both started thinking, we've got a lot of Czech and Slovak heritage living out of our borders. And it's probably worth our time and effort to stay in touch with them and let them help us keep our cultures and traditions alive. So they organized in their parliament something like we called ours Czechs Living Abroad.
Okay.
And so in 1996, they said, if you're interested in keeping your culture and traditions going, we're interested in helping finance that. And we'll even suggest something called language schools. So starting then in the US, in the major cities of the United States and even Canada, there are several of these Czech language schools.
Wow. Our
school received visitors from Parliament who encouraged us. They said, we think your region is a good spot. You'd probably agree with them.
Yeah, just circling back to earlier in the podcast, there were 50-some thousand Czech immigrants, late 19th, early 20th, 200,000 Slovak. So this area has always been a rich area for Czech and Slovak culture. A lot of expats.
So they spotted us, and I remember one official had come and he was encouraging us to start a school, and he said these famous words, which really come from another American movie. He said, if you build it, they will come. So we weren't sure, but we got a group of mostly Czech women. Robin Zofilik was involved in this and a few other parents of the community. And we said, okay, we're going to start a school and we'll see how many kids we get. So our school got organized in 2015, and we're now in our 11th year. Yeah. It's a school, we started with school-age children, but then we thought, well, why not even start with preschoolers? So they come in baby carriages. They stay with us through the whole thing.
That's the primary age.
Yes,
when you pick up language.
That I think was part of the thinking. Get them while they're really young. Yeah. So we've now graduated a bunch of boys who stuck with it through the whole time. They're going to college now, but they speak Czech, they understand Czech. When they go back to visit their grandparents, they speak with their grandparents in Czech. So,
but the grandparents love that.
Yeah, they love that. That is a real motivator.
Yeah. And and just circle back again, part of the movement for Czechoslovakia to come around was resistance to the Germanization and the Magyarization that was going on in those countries. Which was basically, it was making language and culture disappear. So the Czech culture, the Slovak culture, the language was being driven out of existence. So, these schools, I imagine, would have been a priority for the
I think
for the Czech and Slovak governments.
Yeah, they definitely help. Now, is the Czech language going to become a popular language around the world? We don't know.
I don't know. I need to go back and maybe I need. You get a scholarship? Maybe I can go to the language school.
You can apply.
Yeah, I may.
I
may. Prague was nice. We may have to go back a few times. It'd be nice for me to be able to speak the language.
Oh, they love it when they have people from, like when you're visiting and you know some Czech. That's very important to them.
I was a bit daunted by it, so I was happy they spoke English, but it's a Slavic language. It's not. It's not Germanic, so it's very different. But I'm glad it's coming back. It's good to see that investment.
Yes, it is an investment.
And I imagine around the language, there's also a fair amount of culture and traditions that are tied up.
There's so many wonderful traditions that this school, which operates out of the Wilkins Community Center in Regent Square.
Okay.
The kids and the teachers meet there every Saturday morning, but we also meet there for holiday traditions, celebrations, food, sharing.
So another cultural hub out there.
Yes.
So you've got one here in the Nationality Room, and you've got another,
right.
and you have another in the East End.
So, and I would say the room here is one of the more active rooms around the whole country. They do a summer camp weekend that's very popular, and people from all around the country come to their camp. It's out at the Raccoon Creek State Park.
Okay.
And so it's a weekend where I anticipate the woods are filled with Czech and Slovak language.
That would be interesting.
That would be an interesting adventure.
I'm gonna have to go out there and visit.
It's worth the
visit.
visit.
Is it July, August? Is it?
It's always it's always the end of May.
Okay, so it's early before it gets, which is good because we've had quite a summer here.
And of course, a lot of our Czech community, they do go back to the Czech Republic for the summer with their children.
Oh, really?
So they're mostly gone.
Oh, wow. So they can practice their culture. They can practice their language.
They do. Yeah, that's the real thing. Yeah. So Friends of Via, we help them get started with, some money to get things going. And we partner with them. We help them with the grants they receive from Foreign Ministry and other contributions. So, and anything else we can do to help them.
Yeah, that's an amazing concept. Using language to reinforce culture, it also keeps the language alive. So, of all your work with Friends of Via, you work with the school, and you work as an honorary consul. What has been the most satisfying aspect, of getting involved in these cultural organizations?
Well, of course, what VIA has planned appealed very much to me, this grassroots approach where you involve people from the bottom up with their ideas, what's important to them. That appealed to me right away. They also made plans for the future because they wanted to promote philanthropy in the Czech Republic and make it a long-lasting thing. And I think they've done that very well. Around about 2010, when online giving platforms were really popular for easy donation to whatever you want to give your money to, they set up an online platform, .cz, and they did it in a way that people can contribute, but there's no fee involved. Every korun, every penny that you donate goes right to that charity, which I think really appealed to people. And I mean, if you're a charity and there are thousands of them attached to this giving platform, they pay a small fee, but contributors do not. So that's been wildly successful for them. They've had thousands of people who would have never thought of charitable giving, and they have contributed millions of crowns to And it's just not to charities, but any events. Like a few years ago, there was terrible flooding in the Czech Republic,
Yeah.
and it needed an immediate response. And this online platform was there. People knew it was there. They contributed right away. And all of a sudden, there was all this help flowing in.
Right.
It was really, really quite good. There's a story of a woman runner. It was her hobby to run, and she decided to do a fundraiser on this platform. And her goal was long distance running. She picked the long distance. Yeah. She ran through the Alps to Monaco.
The Alps. The Alps.
The Alps.
That's an easy run. Yeah.
And she must have, you could tune in and watch her.
So did she run from Prague?
Somewhere in the Czech Republic. I'm not sure where.
Because Monaco's on the other side of Italy.
Yes.
That's a run. Wow.
Well, so many people were captured by this that they now this year said that was the single largest donation that they've ever seen on their online giving platform.
Imagine that would inspire people.
Yes.
I mean, that's
so it's like anything that comes up, Daruma is there and people are contributing. It was a wonderful way to capture people's attention, I think, for giving. Yeah. The other project that I don't know, it was in the original plans, but it was this plan for introducing young people to philanthropic giving of time and money. And I think it must have gotten started when they had these community meetings where children were involved, and somebody said, hey, we're building a playground. And kids right away said, oh, playground, I have ideas. And they all of a sudden were listening to these kids. And then I think kids started to say, well, I have a friend who he's handicapped, his wheelchair's falling. Can we do a fundraiser to get him a new wheelchair? I don't know how it started, but by I think 2016 is when Young Philanthropists program was organized as a real program with mentors. Parents, of course, came with their children, and they brainstormed things that the children wanted to get involved in. And during that time until now, there are hundreds of these young philanthropists making their home in the Czech Republic. They're recognized by the current president of Czech and Slovakia, President Pavel. He had this last summer, he invited them to his summer home in Lani. I think 60 of them came. They're mostly grown-up children. And he had a picnic lunch for them and thanked them for their service. Very honored moment. And VIA always has a fall or an auction each year of art, jewelry, experiences. This year's auction was devoted to their young philanthropists, and they raised in American dollars, I think $500,000, which will go right to young philanthropists.
Wow. And
one of the more interesting parts, in a follow-up with their young philanthropist group, those who responded back, 85% of them said, they were asked, are you still involved in philanthropy? Are you still involved in philanthropic events? 85% of them said, yes, they were. So this is a program, I think, in the Czech Republic even, that has, people are enthusiastic for it. They want to see it grow, and it is growing.
So that's a way to build community spirit, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Get them when they're young. Teach them philanthropy when they're young. Mm-hmm. Smart people, Czechs. They are. I like the online platform. It sounds like it's been very valuable, and young philanthropy. That's just going to keep giving.
That's a keep giving.
I would imagine that the children that become adults, that they would then teach their children, enroll their children. That could just move on.
Well, I think the goal was always, let's make, like here in the United States, is what they were modeling after. Giving to charity, philanthropic giving is just a natural part of life. I mean, you feel like, oh, I want to give something to that. And so they wanted that kind of environment in their democratic new country. And I think VIA has done their part in making that happen.
It sounds like it. Yes. So it sounds like things are very active. Both sides of the Atlantic going both ways. Sounds like there is still this rich exchange even 100 years after the big wave of immigration ended, and that's quite an achievement.
I can't imagine that the immigrants who came in the 1920s would have ever thought what the future would like, what the immigrant community could do here and has done and continues to do. So,
and they have. It's quite a legacy for them.
I agree.
Well, thank you for talking with us today.
Oh,
really,
you're
it has
welcome.
been an absolute pleasure. I think you've given us a much deeper, a much richer understanding of really what immigration can give back and what it can start. Yes, there were immigrants that came over, to build better lives for themselves, but they never forgot their country, their homelands, and even their children and will be grandchildren now, some great grandchildren continue to give back, and I think that's a legacy. That's a real lesson, in the strength and the benefit of immigration.
And I thank you for recognizing that and having this kind of conversation with you. It was really very kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The Pittsburgh Agreement, an important document marking a major milestone in the formation of modern Czechia and Slovakia. It's a reflection of the powerful force of nationalism and the desire to control your own destiny. And of course, it's more than that. It's a reflection of the powerful force of immigration and the deep ties it forges among families that allows them to maintain their connections regardless of where they live. Immigration is a boon on many levels, it seems. Economically, socially, personally, and it gives to both the host country and the home country, enriching each equally, as long as each is equally invested. Pittsburgh itself continues to be enriched through the work of organizations like Friends of VIA, building on the wave of immigration that once built this city and defines it still. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your own journey today.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you want to learn more about the stories being created around Pittsburgh, sign up for our newsletter on Substack. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn to keep up with the conversation around the Steel City. Until next time, we'll see you online.